So right now we have a couple products. We have a mentorship program and a mastermind program. And the mentorship program, essentially you purchase the course and you have some group calls and but then the mastermind is it's limited to 8 people. We do a call every other week. There's one-on-one time with me, basically making sure that you are successful in the program and that that you get to the end and making sure that everything that you're happy with everything, and that also that you're finding success with the playbooks. And that's our current program right now. We work with people. We're considering maybe in the future doing a done for you service, but that's still sort of in the making. And yeah, it's videos. So it's about 90 videos. Wow. It makes up the 8 playbooks, and it was a lot of recording. It's very in-depth, very detailed. And I've had some people come to me and say, this looks great and I want to learn all this, but I don't think I have the time. Some people, they still have their W-2s, or maybe they have several properties. So I've had 2 people now purchase the course and give it to their VAs. So they're hiring a VA and they're saying, I want this VA to do all my social media for me. They give them the course. So this VA becomes basically an expert in social media for short-term rentals, and they can then work that much better for them and promote their properties. So that's one option that some people have been choosing, because it is, I will say that it's going to be, you need to put some time into it. You need to watch the videos and put the time into creating content, especially if you are a newbie to content creation. But again, this is where influencer marketing comes in, right? If you live really far from your property, there are a few situations. You live really far from your property, you can't go there to collect the content yourself. Or you don't know how to collect content. You're like, I have a phone, but I cannot shoot videos. Or you don't like creating reels, creating videos and editing and picking the music and the text and all of that. So all of those scenarios are great as far as collaborating with influencers. And when I say influencers, I use the term somewhat broadly because, some call themselves content creators, some call themselves influencers. They're sort of the same, but basically travel influencers are people that are great at creating beautiful content. Okay. Because you might have an influencer who has 500,000 followers and you're going to think that's the one I want to work with, right? They have a huge audience. But what if their content is just so-so? Or what if their audience is not the same as yours? It's going to do almost nothing for you. Just to tell a quick story about that, I had an influencer approach me sort of early on, and it was like this. She had almost 700,000 followers. She said, I'd love to come to your place and create some great content and take some photos and share it all with my audience. And I was so excited because this is my first time collaborating. Like, I can't believe I scored one with 700,000 followers this first time. I hadn't agreed to anything yet, but I went and looked at her content, and it was a lot of, shots in her bathing suit, in different scenarios. And I go, this is a family friendly cabin. I should probably check the audience. So I went and checked her demographic, her audience, cause I could see it on this platform. And the breakdown was, I think, like 85% men and then like 15% women or something like that. And I thought, well, the majority of my guests are women and have families. And I thought, I'm not sure this is actually going to be a great match. And so I ended up not working with her. And having worked with several influencers now, I can tell you that the one I worked with that had the most followers, it was about 500,000. She was sort of my demographic, but still not right in the zone. Okay. And then I had someone I worked with who had the least amount of followers. I think she had something like, at the time, 26,000 or something. And she had the best results of all the influencers, and the one with the highest number, but the lowest match, I would say, of the audience had the lowest results. So this gal with the lowest following, she created an amazing reel to a song called Starry Eyed, which I'm like, oh, that's perfect. She dialed it in. She traveled there with her family. She had 2 kids, a husband, a couple girlfriends with her, made this amazing reel, and it had so much engagement because that's what you want, right? Views are views and they're great, but it can be vanity metrics, right? You want the engagement. You want people commenting and saying, "Hey, where is this?" Or messaging you, or so that's really what you want out of an influencer partnership, because it can be tricky to measure the KPIs with that, right? It's not like you collaborate with them and then you get a booking right away. It's more like over time, they have discovered you now, and now they're thinking about it, and they'll consider you for their next vacation. So all things to keep in mind when collaborating with influencers. I know I kind of went on a tangent there, as far as the playbooks, but I did want to get that in because it's important. I think it's such a crucial part, and it can save you a lot of time too, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing. If you just don't have time to create all of this content, which most of us don't, and they can be fabulous for creating the content for you. And then if you also request all of the B footage, all of their footage, not just the reel, then you can, negotiate to use that footage for creating future reels. So it's very powerful to collaborate with influencers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's one of the 8 playbooks. And I want to just go a little bit deeper on that before we talk about the others, because I think people hear that, like, work with influencers, and 99% of people probably have never done that before. Or it sounds like kind of intimidating, like somebody with 500,000 followers, like that's a famous person or something like that. Like, what's the rule of thumb that somebody should expect? Like, how do you hire an influencer? You just like send them a message and say, I want you to come to my property. How much do you pay them? And then what type of results should you expect? Because it feels very nebulous.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I actually, I want to address this too. We have one member currently, and she had said at one point, she said, I feel like sometimes I look at all these influencers and I think, why would they even want to stay at my place? I see all these incredible places everywhere. And why would they, choose my place to stand? But, it's not as nebulous as people might think. And I think, yes, I guess you could consider them celebrities, but they're really just people. And I like to start with, first of all, following them, finding influencers, even if they're not in your area yet. And you'd be surprised how many influencers are willing to travel pretty far distances to do these collaborations. So you don't necessarily have to narrow yourself down to just people in your city or just people in your state. They're willing to travel. Now, as far as the typical situation, it's usually 2 nights. And you're trading the 2 nights, right, in exchange for them creating content for you. And some of them will charge an additional fee on top of that. Some of them don't. It depends on how popular they are, how often they do this specifically, collaborating with short-term rentals and properties. Because if they do that specifically for a living, they'll probably charge a little bit for a reel. And this can range from like $300 to, $800 usually. It can be within that range in terms of how much they charge for, 1 reel, 2 to 3. It just depends. And we actually have an agreement. It's part of the playbook. So a template agreement, very detailed for people to use, and also with all of the deliverables to ask for. Because people are like, well, what do I ask for? Can you please come? I had, one gal who, she had an influencer come stay at her place in Hawaii, and she was super excited about it. And it was her first influencer. We looked at the content at the end, and it was just footage of Hawaii and nothing in her property. And so, it's very important to establish these things. Like, she stayed in her place, but she just got a bunch of footage of Hawaii, and she goes, oh, you can use this for your property. And she's like, I'm not a, Hawaiian travel agency. Like, this is for my property. So you do need to clarify those things up front, just to make sure you know exactly what you're asking for. And some people say, oh, should I charge them a cleaning fee? I never charge a cleaning fee. That's sort of standard practice. It sort of depends on what your nightly rate is and then how many nights they're staying. But there are different ways that you can negotiate. If they're traveling really far to come to your place and they're a really, really great influencer, then maybe you stretch it to 3-4 nights. It's sort of case by case basis. And as far as after the collaboration, it's really great to leverage the collabs somehow. So either you do a giveaway, so they post the reel, and then you do a giveaway right after, and then they can promote the giveaway in their stories. Hey, you know that place I just posted about? They're doing a giveaway right now. Or they post the reel and they say, I just stayed at this incredible place. If you want to get 10% off, use the code, Jess10 at checkout. So they have their own special code, and people get a discount if they use it. And that's that creates that sense of urgency too, right? More urgency to book. They could even say if you book within, this next week and use my code, you'll get 10% off. So there are ways to also really leverage the timing of the collaboration and what you're, with discounts or giveaways, to make sure you're getting the biggest bang for your buck.
Awesome. No, that's super helpful. Cause it's something that probably most people wouldn't think about doing, but it can make a huge impact. So that's one of the 8 playbooks. If you can just maybe just mention what the other 8 are, and then I'd love to just kind of talk about some of the lowest hanging fruit maybe. Cause I know obviously there's 90 videos. You can't go through all of the content here. This has been super helpful so far, but I'm sure there's other things that maybe somebody listening right now could go implement today or implement this week that might have a result.
Yeah. Oh gosh, let me see if I have these memorized, in the correct order too. I'm like, I know there are 8. So, okay. I mean, really the first couple I think are, it's the branding, creating that brand identity. And then it's content creation, social media marketing. There's influencer collabs, email marketing, creating the direct booking website, Facebook and meta ads.
And then giveaways.
And giveaways, right? Which we kind of goes with the influencer marketing too. But yeah, I mean, again, we talked about sort of in the beginning with branding and theming. I think, I know it's incredibly important to create some kind of brand for your place and some kind of name. If you're just like, Surfside Retreat, that doesn't mean anything. No one's gonna. That doesn't pull at any emotions. It's not clever. It's not memorable. Coming up with a name that matches your theme. And again, the theme doesn't have to be complicated or crazy. It can be subtle, but branding is very, very important. It builds trust. It makes people remember you. It makes them want to associate with you. It also helps with influencers too, right? It helps with everyone wanting to be associated with you, staying at your place. And I do have to say, the reason we start there with branding is because in many ways, the branding and the theming is a prerequisite for any of this working. So if you came to the program and you just bought a place and it has no branding and no theme and it's sort of mediocre, right? If it's like a 1-bedroom apartment in, Boston that's not decorated, or that's just for travelers going to conferences or something by the airport, something like that, right? Then the social media stuff is probably not going to be effective for it. I'm just going to, say that it's not like it just works for any place. The place has to be great. You have to make sure that the product is there. No amount of yelling on Instagram is going to make people stay there if it's not awesome. So that does need to be figured out before you apply these strategies, because you have to make sure the place looks great and it's well branded and you've picked a name. So we do, teach the branding, theming, picking a name, starting the Instagram account, creating the bio, all of that in the program, because that's a very important core component to start with.
One question on that too.
Yeah.
Could you turn that Boston 1-bedroom into a fully branded Instagrammable place?
You absolutely could. Yes.
Okay.
That's when it's time and fun to get creative with it, right?
Yeah.
How could I make this place that maybe is sort of mundane or boring? How could I make this like the go-to place to stay when you're going to conferences? What if it's conference themed? I don't know. You have Tony Robbins pictures everywhere, or, something like you could make it something, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you as the owner, if you, niched down and you made just really comedic content or something, people would remember that. Has to be something though, that makes it stand out. Otherwise it's just, you could post a picture. Here's the living room. Here's the bedroom. Nobody's going to care unless it's, has a nice brand, themed, and you're presenting it well. And then getting into content creation, we walk through this completely in terms of what to film, how to film it, and emphasizing that you don't need to be a professional photographer or videographer to capture great content of your place. I have no experience in videography, and I just captured everything on my phone, almost everything. My husband happens to have a drone, so he did the drone footage, and we just filmed ourselves, especially in the beginning. We thought, well, I guess we're the demographic, right, of who stays here, because you do need to figure that out, right? You have to figure out your guest avatar, who is your ideal guest profile, your ideal customer profile, and to make sure that all of your branding and your messaging speaks to that. And we said, well, we'll just film ourselves here doing all the amazing things. And what's kind of fun about that is going up to the cabin, for me, it was always, a lot of work. And I'm going, oh my God, going to the cabin. Great. But it was always so much work being at. There was always something to repair and fix and renovate. And when we went there to film, we're like, okay, let's get some shots in the hot tub. So we went in the hot tub and I'm like, oh, this is kind of nice. Oh, this is a nice hot tub. What a great view. Usually not having time for that. I'm like, okay, let's go play some foosball. That would be great to have in the footage. So they're playing foosball and it was a blast. I never played foosball before. And I go, wow, this is really fun. Let's do yoga on the deck. Thinking about all the great things about your space and living it out to its capacity, right? It's what people would want to do. And I think that's so important in your content, is to emphasize the experiences that people can have there. Because that's so much what travel is these days. It's not just a bed to sleep in or a kitchen to cook in. It's the experience that people have while they're there. And I think showcasing what makes that different, whether it's like being in nature or having a built-in arcade or, a mini golf course on your property, whatever it is, that people can experience while they're there. You definitely want that in your content. So that's kind of a perk to doing the footage yourself, right? Is that you can experience all the fun things. And, it's nice to make sure that the footage is stable. There's certain just really best practices. Film it vertically if you're doing Instagram, because it's a vertical platform. And so we cover that. And then the social media marketing is really about, creating that profile, getting your handle, and putting the bio together, and then how often to post and what to say and what should be in the captions and which hashtags to use. There's so many things. People, they come and they go, I can't stand social media. Like, I'm on it all the time, doom scrolling, but I kind of can't stand it as far as like creating the content. So we walk through, step by step, every step of how to do that. And I also tell our members, just to warn them, that when you do start Instagram for your property, the Instagram algorithm will become familiar with you and will become familiar with what type of content you're posting and what type of content to feed you. They're going to start feeding you content of other vacation rentals. So, and it's like, I forget the name of the principle, but it's like if you are shopping for a white car, you suddenly see white cars everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's similar in that way. Suddenly you're seeing all these incredible vacation rentals and you're going, oh my gosh, everyone has a vacation rental, or oh my gosh, everyone's place is amazing, or everyone's on social, everyone's collaborating with influencers. And you start to feel like behind. You get the imposter syndrome. And it's so important to, first of all, give yourself a timer when you're on Instagram for your property, so you don't get lost in the scroll. Do the 15 minutes or whatever with engaging and then get off. And because we all know the effects it can have there, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be a slave to social media just to make this work, but to remind yourself, my place is great and I'm doing it anyway. That's what I say all the time. I'm doing it anyway. So-and-so is already doing this. I'm doing it anyway. You just keep going. You just keep doing that. A little therapy there for everybody, because I understand how that goes.